are saying. And how you doing, Marshal?
Howdy.
Marshal?
And so,
Hello, sir.
so, long day, very, very long day.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, you're good.
I can step away.
No, you're good. We were just talking about I don't know, just internal things that things are very down bad. Tensions between departments and all this, and we're just kind of discussing how we can sort of resolve this for the betterment of the city. But
Well, that's tough.
yeah,
That's a lot of work to be done.
yeah, it's So I'm gonna start kind of from where did I go to? Yes, we talked about people getting moved over, right? So 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 right, the bank accounts kind of split. The original intent when I had spoken to the marshal about this problem about just garnering funds down here is that it was very intentional. It was on Twitter and stuff. And unfortunately, when I brought it out as sort of as a mediation before talking to Marshal Soze, I was like, look, we're having a problem here where I have to reduce everyone's pay because we can't afford it.
Right.
And if we go into the negative, it stops everyone's paycheck from coming in until more money is gone. So it was a very serious problem. Unfortunately, the communication was seen more of a, you're banning us from Los Santos rather than like, can we figure out how to make this work so everyone in the city, including the police department, stops getting paychecks. But ultimately, the changes at the state level with the separate accounts sort of resolve that. It was, I want to say that week going into the week afterwards, where I started getting phone calls, and I can name them because I brought it up to the offices and they made reports, is I started getting calls from individuals that were being processed, like from a point of confusion. Like, I think the first one to contact me was a Daquan dumbass, and he said, Nino, I don't understand. I just did a crime down here. I got arrested down here. And these guys are saying I'm worth X amount of money. And they brought me up and they took my legal amount of joints, because you can have up to 8 joints in Los Santos. I think you can have it in Blaine too. I think they adopted our legislation. But they took it off of him and he was just confused, right? And I was confused too because it didn't seem right. Like this was kind of like, it's unexpected. And then I got
they dragged him up north.
Yes.
And then took his marijuana because now that they dragged him up north, it's illegal. That's literally textbook entrapment.
They didn't adopt the legislation until August 8th.
Yeah.
Which is quite a number of days after we passed it.
And the only reason that, so then they went through that whole thing and I said, I'm going to look into it. Then I got another call from a Rami Al-Rahman. That one's a little tough because Rami is somebody that he can't stop himself from telling half-truths. So
yeah.
I will just say he made a complaint, and I'm not going to take his statement with any level of gravity just because I only have his sensationalized version of it.
Yeah, I've dealt with Rami before. I'm well aware.
So,
I was an officer 8 years ago in Vinewood PD, back when that was Vinewood PD and everything.
Oh shit! Okay. Yeah, it's crazy because like he was calling me to ask if I could be his lawyer, and while I don't do it out of just ethics sake, right? Even if nothing prevents me from doing it, there's a bit of a confliction. So I told him I couldn't, and even then I didn't fully. I'm sure something happened, but I don't know to what extent. And then I kept getting other calls too. Those are the ones that were notable. At that, any call beyond that point became just another one to put on the pile, right? And so when I brought that up, I immediately was met with hostility instead of a conversation, you know? And because there was no conversation to be had with the mayor up there or high command up there, I was left with no option because we couldn't even move to why it was a problem, just like we couldn't move to the conversation that far with why it was a problem when they were just, let's just say, farming checks down here. It wasn't about how it was affecting us. It was more what they were losing. And so conversation didn't advance. And ultimately I said, we need to, I talked to LSPD High Command. I'm like, this is a problem. There's the two jurisdictions, sub-authorities. Can they even do this? And at the time, LSPD High Command, they're building the department up. And from what I've seen, there has been a desire for them to fulfill this unified PD mantra. And I say mantra because UPD is not legislatively defined. LSPD and BCSO are inherently two separate entities with two separate jurisdictions. And so to me, even hearing UPD, I'm like, what is that? I know what it used to be, but we're living in a different universe now. You know what I mean? It's a very different paradigm. And in many ways, the notion of a UPD is sort of like the antithesis of one police department having communal understanding of what's happening in that neck of the woods, right? But anyways, without going into the whole philosophy of that, they didn't want to poke the beast too much. But then it started to become a problem, and that's when I wrote up legislation, which you can see on the City Hall page. I called it the Anti-Extradition Act. And what that did, and I was trying to find some middle ground there, which was legislatively stating that if you as an individual in Los Santos County are arrested for doing a crime in Los Santos and are arrested in Los Santos, that you as a person have the right to refuse to be transported to another county for processing. And the key things there are, technically, if you do the crime in Los Santos, you could be arrested in Blaine County. You're still under Los Santos County legislation, right? It's wherever the crime started. That's why it's defined.
Yeah, exactly. It's where the crime occurred.
Correct. But in this legislation, I put that extra caveat and said, we need both of these things to happen. And they have to say, I don't want to go up north, right? So it gives them that freedom to, like, at least have the choice. So I did it very like, you know, with gloves on. That got rejected under the basis that Bolingbrook was, I didn't really get the argument for it, but the justices spoke about it. And I think it was a breakdown of communication, the inherent nature of, we're writing like middle school levels of legislation, right? Like comparatively to where things are in the United States. And in doing so, because it's not as verbose and whatever, is that there becomes a communication problem between the writer and the reader, possibly days later, with no actual verbal conversation. It's responses in text form. So effectively it boiled down to, well, why you can't do, it's against the Constitution because Bolingbrook is up there. They would have to get transported up, right? And we can't jail him here. Now, we didn't then go further with this because we had other problems that we were facing, specifically members of Blaine County Sheriff's Office contesting our legislation, which hampered our ability to do past businesses and stuff. And so I put this on the back burner. I said, look, we got all this other shit. We're going to put this in the back burner. About a week ago, I had a conversation with Justice Angel on this very topic. I believe Michael was present. And at this stage, we've now gotten past some of the bigger issues out of the way, the more high priority ones. And I opened up that topic again and I said, can we do this? Like, we can explicitly note that Bolingbrook is not what we're referencing here, right? We're specifically talking about where you're processed for the crime, not where you're incarcerated. And the answer was, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was something to the effect of, that's in the purview of the police department.
Yes.
And at that point, I stopped the conversation, not because I agreed, but because I didn't think the conversation could move any more forward, because I don't get what that means. Because
A philosophical difference.
yeah, it's I don't care what the PD wants to do. This is about someone's civil liberties, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, it comes up a little bit more than that, too. You say you want to talk about philosophy. I'm a huge legal philosophy nerd. So the whole philosophy behind fines is it's restitution for the people of Los Santos to recuperate the damages from a crime committed.
Yeah.
And the whole point is, if you commit a crime in Los Santos, the fine is committed and given back to the people as restitution. Same thing as like you steal somebody's wallet and you take $200 from there and they find it at you, but you already spent that $200. Well, you have the victim may have an opportunity to be like, well, pay me restitution. I want $200 restitution.
Yes.
Maybe an extra 50 on top of that. And that's a whole process that can be done. But by transporting them out, whenever a crime is committed in Los Santos, I mean, to me, if a crime is committed in Los Santos, the person flees and gets arrested in Blaine County, wherever that crime originally occurred, that fine needs to go to that as restitution for the crime to the people of Los Santos or Blaine County. Now, if they're griping about the fact that, we have low on funds and things like that, that's an entirely different issue. If they're low on funds because, they're not arresting people in Blaine County, and maybe there's not enough crime occurring in Blaine County, well, then shrink your department. Stop accepting 1 billion transfers because you're overinflating and draining your own account. That's not y'all's fault. That's them for not budgeting based on the amount of crime that's occurring in their county.
Yes. In fact, we did bring this up. During this period of time, this was highlighted and communicated, but there's when a mind is made up as to there being malice, it's hard to sort of have a honest conversation about these things. And I mean, quite frankly, to be transparent, we have not had the bandwidth to bring up some of the more critical issues. I have everyone was able to vote across the state for the county elections. And my phone is always available to anybody, like even if they live somewhere outside the county, because there is inherently no like residential, like you're not a resident anywhere in particular. Everyone's got an apartment,
Right.
Down south. And so it's gotten to the point where I have large swaths of individuals up north that do not see cops at all, which opens up that door of like dereliction of duty, right? I have been witness myself to just weed moving around up north, moonshine being dropped off, not a cop in sight. And it's gotten to the extent where people call me and they're like, I need you to help me with my business up here. Or like, people just like stabbed each other up here. Where are the cops? And I'm like, I can't do anything about it. Because inherently my power ends after electing a chief, right? So, while I can provide some sort of like guidelines, and this is something I started going down until I was stopped by the marshals at the time. Not stopped, but very strongly discouraged in the inference that it's not my purview, was the notion of police policy, right? Policy of a department, like defining this is what me as a representative of the people am saying what their expectations are, right? So it wouldn't necessarily hold them accountable from a legal perspective, but would be a declaration of expectation. You know what I mean? So, welfare of the public, welfare of property, whatever it is that the people ultimately find to be their what they perceive as the things that are harming them the most from a criminal perspective, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, if you want police policy to change, it's literally it's in your purview. If you want their policy to change for LSPD anyway, that's the whole point. That's why you have appointment of the chief power.
yeah,
You don't like what they're doing, you appoint a new chief who's going to follow your directives because you are elected by the people to set those directives with the expectations, and you set those expectations upon them by appointing a chief that's going to follow those expectations.
what if the
It's my understanding you could just rip out the chief right now, like you wanted to. You can just replace the chief every single day if you wanted to, right?
That is my understanding, but as the let's say the goalpost has sort of moved, what I have been strongly encouraged is that doing so would be manipulative and puppety. And
That's literally politics.
yeah. And so
they can put a label on it, whatever they want. That's politics. That's
Yeah,
politics
he's
in
not
a
wrong.
nutshell.
So here's I'm gonna explain why I think it goes a little bit further than that. I'm not sure how familiar you are with losantos.me. It's a website.
I've heard of it. I'm not super familiar with it though.
So, I'm gonna tell you what we faced, and you take it, as you will. Going back about 6 weeks, we wrote up a series of legislation, mostly surrounding a number of things. I think pet ownership, importation of pets, and ownership, access to canine units for the LSPD, business law, tax law, incentives, subsidies for certain areas like towing, mechanics, subsidization of materials. Well, it's like subsidy slash, let's call it, what's the word? We're like redirecting materials to mechanic shops. So repairs are prioritized.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yep. And so these go up. We spent about 3 days, like 14 hours a day. Separate one. My staff is pretty big. Different of us, like writing up the legislation, peer reviewing it with each other, sending it up over those 3 weeks, so we can get ahead of the curve and spend the next of the, mayorship refining the legislation based on what happens. Right? Are there holes? We find holes. We go fix it, etc., etc. Anyways, we submit it all. It goes into contest phase, I believe, on Tuesday of whatever that week was. And I wake up the next night, happen to look on my phone, and all 6 have been simultaneously contested. We don't know who. We don't know why. And so, and what that means is it's now up for vote on the polls immediately. So inherently, it's a bit of a political crisis. It is what it is. We're confused because that infers you need 50 times 6, $300,000 to contest 6 of them.
I think it was 100.
Was
at
it
the time.
600,000
I mean,
to
we
contest
have
it all?
Let me take a look. Hold on.
Well, regardless of the details, let's say it's 300, 600,000. It's a lot of money for all the hit at once. So now, like, we don't even know the why. We just need to know that we got to go campaign. During this process, we learned that the actual legislation that defined contesting had changed to remove the cost after our legislation had already been posted.
100 per.
It was 100 per?
100 per.
We then found out that, let's say the Chief Justice, and I've got testimonies, right? That Chief Justice went to the food court, noted some legislation had gone up, pointed out that the stalls are going to have to pay tax. Who, by the way, the night before, the same Chief Justice told me she's going to go and contest in court my legislation once it passes. right? Gone down, got Ursula hyped up, and Ursula told her, and Ursula's told me this, others were witnesses, said, I don't know if I can afford 600,000. And that within the same 30 minutes to an hour, that line for the cost is immediately removed.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is different.
Yep.
Before I got hired on the Marshal's office, I literally copied every single legislation into my phone as a document.
Yep.
Yeah.
It doesn't match what's on there now.
Yep.
So,
And-
Marshall, if you're a lawyer, you can actually check the audit history, but any common citizen has no way of knowing when basically a law is edited.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest issues is like laws change constantly right now, and there's no like public information network to disseminate that properly other than the state announcements, which, you know, if you're not awake at that time, you don't receive them. So you may wake up a week from now and have no idea what changed.
But even those aren't happening. Right.
Well, we make it a point. Like, I've sent my second one today. I'm going to do another one tomorrow morning, another one afterwards. But even then, you're 100% right about this. But we, the affected party who's representing the county, we're not even told that this occurred. It just, we woke up to it, right? And now, during that, so they contested 2 of them. The rest were contested by a officer named Nakota. And we know this because we did our own investigation. Ursula told us directly that she did 2 of them, or 3 or 4 or something like that. And we found out about Nakota because he who's dating the deputy mayor of Blaine County, who used to work for this staff, who works for Andy, went after that legislation around businesses, was in contact with the chief justice, went around the police station to get what is now only 25 votes. We still, to this day, do not know why these things were contested. In fact, today, when I asked him directly why he contested it, he claimed he never did until I told him I had receipts. So, the system itself, whatever, it's strange. But the problem at the time was that we had legislation change mid-legislation getting passed, which then got immediately reflected on something that was like in process. I don't know the legalities of that. It sounds pretty fucked.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, I mean, basically, the process was changed and applied retroactively to laws that were already in the contest phase.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that doesn't seem
legal.
I won't comment on that, but
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So now this isn't the biggest issue, but this is, remember, this is tying back into, it's just politics. It should be in your purview, but what was also within my purview, and this is the recent shit that we're trying to unpack, is I was made notice. There's a massive argument that erupted between the assistant chief and the chief justice post shift 1 meeting 2 days ago. Me and Michael were present during the meeting to announce some PD related stuff. I think free repairs or something. I think we like raised their pay or something. I don't remember what exactly, but we heard just little bits of what was happening. There was a lot of shouting, which ultimately, while we're in the lobby, we had the justice come out and say that if you don't do this, I'm going to file an injunction for something. I don't remember what it was. If you remember, Michael, do you remember what it was?
I feel like I took notes. Let me take a look.
Okay.
You carry on with
But,
the story.
You know, I was then, I went to go talk to Peters, and I noticed there's like 10 cops there. And apparently what had transpired was as follows. There was individuals that were put in for 900 months for, I think, 12 cop shootings. And there was a discussion on the table about 900 being too much. They're going to use their discretion to put some kind of high-level limit on it. And when it was brought into question as to whether they had the authority, well, so what happened is that this information hit a marshal, went up the chain, it turned into a conversation. Peters allegedly just said, where is this in legislation that we don't have this discretion? It turned into a lot of uproar, right? Whatever. Not my place, right? Let them handle this. It then turns out that on Twitter, an individual named Miguel Almarian exposed these conversations out. As it turns out, there is a deputy that had this, that was privy to this conversation that also took place in Blaine County, and told this gang member about that private conversation, which is how it got on Twitter. Justice Angel taking away police discretion, etc., etc. What came after that was the notion that this problem that never existed, as far as I'm aware, where police always had this discretion to, reduce fine and time, was now brought as like it was reintroduced as something that only the DOJ has control of. There is no discretion anymore, right? Despite this being a historic thing as far as I've been in the city.
Yeah, skip through this whole DIN Act thing, right?
Yes. And so now the allegation was, well, no, this is actually a problem I'm going to rectify, was the reply she put up. And then said that the mayors are the ones that control the fine and time. And so now I'm like, why am I getting dragged in this? What am I controlling? So obviously this ended up taking a bit of a head. So I had heard the side of, the PD side of things. And so I made a phone call and I said, I called Angel and I said, what happened? Right? I want to hear your side of it. And we got into the ultimately where that conversation went, because I needed a statement, you know what I mean? And not oh, it's like this, so like, you know what I mean? I need like a concrete statement, like what's the stance here? Like what happened? And the ultimate stance boiled down to, because I heard everything and I summarized it. I'm like, are you telling me what I'm hearing here is that up until this new constitution came out and all the legislation following it, police used to have the discretion. But now that this new constitution is out, it is now solely in the hands of the DOJ. And that inherently, doesn't that mean that for the last 2 months, if you were to audit, that all the fine and time reductions would inherently be illegal? The conclusion was yes. But I'm not going to say that because then I have to go retroactively take care of it. Fine. I say.
That would be a mountain of paperwork.
It would be a mountain of paperwork. But I'm trying to get a stance here, right? Because if you can't make that stance, then you're not actually saying what side of the fence you're on. And so then I say, okay, so then what about these sliders that you're talking about on Twitter? Because, like, as far as I know, me and Andy have them, but I was explicitly, and this is, my memory of this is fuzzy, but I remember Soze telling me that the slider either didn't work or that we shouldn't touch it. I don't remember one of the two, but it was enough to make me say, you know what, I ain't going to touch this thing. Leave it where it is.
Fair.
And so I said, so why, like, what knowledge do you have that me and her can control this? She said, well, you got him. I'm like, okay. I went in there and I pointed out, I can't change the time. It's grayed out. It's like, oh, yeah, because Andy controls that one and you control the fines. I'm like, okay, but, and I told her the Soze story, and I'm like, I don't know if I should touch this. And I made it very clear, right? And at this stage, it's very clear I control one, Andy controls the other. There is no like misinterpretation, because the conversation was reclarified a couple times. And I'm like, so you're telling me I can change this? And she said, yes. Are you sure, despite what Soze said? Yes. that if I put this down to 50%, it's perfectly fine. She says yes. And so I said, all right, look, the entire fucking South Side and all these people want to fucking murk cops, right? And
Yeah.
they're fucking a
All the time.
borderline riot over all this shit that's happening. Let's go reduce the fine a little bit and give them a fucking bone, right?
Mhm.
And maybe this will like cool temper things, right? Especially since there's other things that I won't bring up right now. There's about to be a war from the South Side because cops are putting other cops' lives on danger and like baiting cops. It's been this is what I've been dealing with for 13 hours, by the way.
Oh boy.
I bring it down and I make a state announcement. And I immediately get a phone call. And now I suggest you bring it back to where it was. I'm like, okay, what do you mean? Like, what happened? I just put my entire like ball sack out there onto a state announcement. I'm not gonna try to die now? Like, what the fuck? Like, just tease motherfuckers?
Right.
And it came down to, well, you should probably talk to Andy about it. I'm like, I don't understand. I control this, she controls that. We can meet, we can talk about these things, sure. Right? Like, thank you for the suggestion, I guess. And the suggestion kept getting stronger, and I was like, why? And like, well, I think you should talk about it. I'm like, look, I will. Phone call ends, right? I then see a officer tweet out a cost. Thank you, Mayor Nino. The cost of a police officer getting shot is now worth a police life is now worth like one across. And I'm like, what the fuck? Number one, why are you telling everybody?
Right.
Number two, is it that low? Like, what the fuck? How does he know? I didn't pull out my MDT, and now I'm learning, wait a minute, the charge update, the time, like, it updates in real time, which was shocking to me, mostly because other of these tablet systems in the city, like G6, when you make an alteration, it doesn't actually reflect, as far as I know. You just see you always see the base amount. So it was shocking to me. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh fuck, I should actually record what it was before and where it is now, so that, you know, we can go sit down and like figure out, like, does something need to change? Is it too low? Is it too much? Because that does kind of seem a little fucked up. You know, let me do my due diligence.
So the slider changed the time and fine for literally every state charge too, is what you're saying.
The time. Oh, sorry, the fine, not the time.
The fine. Gotcha.
Yeah, it changes this for everything. And so now I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so then that's when I get I look at it and I notice some of the base charges have now been altered. And what I mean by that is, and I know this specifically because there's a lot of references. I forgot who it was. Like, had stolen like a Marshal revolver, and it was like 50,000. It's like a very easy to remember number. And I remember I look at the charges, and I'm like, why the fuck is a revolver at 50,000 still? That's weird. Wait, but these other ones changed. And then I open up the MDT. It's changed again. I'm like, wait. Something's off here. That's when I get another phone call saying, I think you should bring it back because now by Angel, that I think you should bring it back because now the cops are complaining to me that about them being worth one across. About 10 minutes have elapsed since our last phone call. And the only thing that's happened in between is this deputy tweeting out. And so we have a funeral about 15 minutes later, right? It's the 4 officers. It was scheduled, I think, 7 p.m. What is it, 2 nights ago now? Or yesterday? I don't know. My days are like blending. And I'm like, listen, let me meet with the cops right after this funeral and let's like figure this out. And it was, don't have time, change it back right now. I'm like, okay, listen, we can do this, but I got a funeral to go to. I don't want to go to like fucking move a bunch of shit now because some of these base costs have changed. And now I'm freaking out that what could have been just a quick change is now something else. And it was like, don't make me file an injunction. She tells me that don't make me, if you don't do it, I'm going to file an injunction to allow Blaine County to double the fines if they process people in the sheriff's office.
Huh?
And I'm like, what? So there's a couple things going through my mind, which is number one, what the fuck does Blaine County have anything to do with this? Right? Number two, why would you file the injunction? Well, because she said she didn't know it was statewide. Right? That was the first thing she said. But the thing is, we already established, and she knew, and she brought it up to me that it was statewide to begin with. And gave me the authorization and told me if I change it and anything happens, it's on her. Like I had clarified this 4 or 5 times. Like I asked for, it wasn't like, can I do it? And I did it. It's like, are you sure? And this, like, I don't want to fuck something up, you know? And now it's, I didn't know it was statewide and I'm going to file an injunction. And it wasn't until later I realized she did it because it wasn't just because of this. It's because indirectly Blaine County's now not all these arrests they're farming down here means that they can't process them up there for as much. And now they can't buy their interceptors. And I know some of this is a little cheeky, but that's what's been happening. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, look, let's talk about this. And I asked, did you change all the base charges? And she said yes. And so I'm like, can you change them back so that we can bring it back so we don't fuck everything up, like with the fines and times? Because if you've doubled those and then we bring the slider back up because there's another charge or whatever and we talk about it, well, now all of a sudden we need you to go in there. All the variables have changed, right?
Well,
and I'm just like trying to figure out, like, why is this go? Like, what's being rectified? What's the problem here? And where it went down to is when I started pressing this and the reasons for it, I was like, can you explain why this is the case and why you told me this? It was just, there was no reason. It was just, this is what I want you to do, right? And I'm not comfortable with that because I have my responsibilities, and that includes to the voting public. So if something's in my purview, like, I need to know the why, otherwise I'm not going to do it, right?
yeah, that's fair.
And the same reason why I wasn't going to touch the slider until you tell me I can. It's in that same bucket. And ultimately it ended with me saying some things. And I mean, I'll just say it. I asked if any logic was being used when making these decisions. And that's when shit popped off. And it was like, I want you to change this. And I'm like, is that an order? I'm suggesting you do it. Is it an order? Like, are you telling me to do this right now? Because otherwise I'm not going to. I'm going to do it how I feel comfortable doing it. 2 minutes and back and forth. Yes, I'm ordering you to do it. So I did it. Phone call lights. So now we haven't even unpacked the legalities of all of this, because is it in my purview? Why was I told to do one thing, then something else later? Like, how, where, what is the mayor? So, you know, this all ties back to, yes, some of these things like, you know, my purview over the LSPD appointment and how they should operate was instinctively and historically and comparatively to other places around the United States a reasonable expectation. But things like this prevent me from really, you know, stepping too much beyond what is clearly defined.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is there's not a lot clear to define, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, that whole thing with the slider thing sounds like it was a whole load of miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And when you came to actually try it out, it didn't work the way they anticipated it to. And nobody wanted to take responsibility for things being touched.
Yes.
And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't think you should have authority to be able to adjust the fines on state law, even if it's within your territory.
I agree.
But I think our system should have the option to define charges in our MDW that are state charges and local county charges. And then you should have the ability to adjust the time and fine on your county charges. But those are civil penalties, typically. I mean, most of that stuff is going to be generally a civil penalty. And, I mean, that's why you should have authority, because you're representative of the city or the county, and you should have that adjustment authority.
So there is, what I can say is that I agree with you, like on a philosophical level, and even from a like pragmatic perspective. The way, however, the way that it was, this kind of goes back to things are not defined, so it allows a lot of, how do I put it? Allows a lot of folks to individually to flex their authority where things are undefined, right? Without any legal justification. And when it comes to the sliders, the way that it was originally noted to us, and it was noted in a way where, because I believe it was they don't work, with the inference that they will eventually work. And one thing I've learned is things start changing, and me or Andy probably don't learn that it changed, right? So I think at some point the sliders started working, but when it was described, the idea was, the way that I remember it being described is, I control the sliders, she controls the fines, and it's understood at a state level. And the way that it's resolved at the state level, it's kind of like the UN, right? We meet, she's like, I'm going to bring the time up. But like, and I'm like, but I want to bring the fine down, and we meet in the middle. You get what I'm saying? Like, we both got a different gun.
That's a terrible idea.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying was the idea behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds terrible. That sounds horrible.
What, battling fine and time?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I don't know. Philosophically, yeah. Theoretically, there should be a third person with a slider, and that's whoever's in charge of the state jurisdiction, so like the DOJ being able to change the sliders on state-determined crimes.
Yeah.
And then you have sliders for your county fines.
Well, I don't think I should have any control of either of those things. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. That's really odd.
Yeah.
I'm learning how a lot of this stuff works, and I'm finding out it doesn't.
Oh no. Yeah, it's but that's kind of where this things have turned to shit in the last 2 months. If I'm going to be rather transparent, it's in a worse spot. I came into this position witnessing what happened in July 3rd, knowing full well it wasn't just shooting up the courthouse and rushing it, that there was other I came in from the perspective of watching lawyers not being able to represent clients, dodgy things happening, like claiming no lawyers exist when they're in the lobby because SOPs state if no one's in the yellow pages, the lawyer doesn't exist. I died on a cross for FOIA to put into legislation because the FOIA process was 4 lines, effectively inferring that law enforcement never had to produce, because it was not in legislation, arrested individuals, like arrest reports, until it hit the docket. And that when I tried to parlay of like, here's a problem, it ultimately resulted in me having to have an argument with the Chief Crane until he finally wrote it in.
Jesus.
And even today, we're now finding issues where I'm getting complaints that they are intentionally waiting the extra days so that it falls out of statute. There's a lot of, let's just say, people are gaming everything. And there's no honest conversation around it. And unfortunately, the honest conversations can't be had because they're so bubbled around emotion. And that's the best way I can describe it, because I mean, look, I have a very like particular way of thinking, you know, and sometimes it's rough for folks, but it kind of comes down to, I tell you why I stand by something, and I want to know why you stand by something, so we can talk about the difference and come to a,
a mutual understanding.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's how a lot of people operate anymore. I mean, across the board. So
yeah, a lot of people have their ideals and everything set in stone and don't want to contemplate from different points of view.
I just got done today, and I'll let you know. I reported this to the police earlier. South Side's currently boiling up, and I got wind of this when cops were advertising their locations and other offices on Twitter to try to get some crews out of Cyprus to come hunt them down. So that, and this is going to sound awful and accusatory, but I can back all these statements. Knowing full well that if they get hunted, it results in a shootout and they get more money processing in the shares.
Jesus Christ.
And so from my position, this is my county, and why is gangs getting, incited? Because it's not just, I don't care if they want to, jump off a fucking building, right? If someone wants to do it, that's not my, you know what I'm saying? Like, but you're not going to incite in my fucking county and possibly get other people hurt, including officers.
Right.
So I look into this, and as I'm looking into it, I now have similar reports coming from other groups. People coming down, like, trying to incite a violent reaction, knowing that they can scoop in, shoot them up, and they're now worth money. In other words, there's like a direct benefit. Yes. And now, it's not solely them, but it's a mentality that's also made its way into some LSPD officers as well. And for me,
I don't doubt it.
That's scary, because that's not law enforcement. You're actually doing quite the opposite, right? The law enforcement is not throw someone in jail because they're the bad guy. You are the bad guy at that point.
That's dereliction of duty.
Absolutely. And so, in the midst of all this, and hearing that that there was effectively Hell Week that was opening up, I did what I could do best, and I tried to understand their perspective. What's going on? What's the case? Is it a specific officer? What is the problem, right? And knowing full well that some of it's just going to be like, what, baby crying, right? Like, oh, we can't do crime and the cops came. No, it was very, like, poignant points. So I spoke to Daisy and Peters, the chief and the ass chief, and I'm like, we need to find out what the fuck is happening and if there's a way to dialogue out of this, right? Because sometimes these problems might just be some small bullshit, and it can be resolved without any bloodshed. Fast forward, and there was a meeting, and during said meeting, some officers made their way down to the south side. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to point out here, and you're going to see this all in the report. It's probably not going to get written until tomorrow, but I think about 2 hours ago I reported this. There was a very heated conversation that happened right prior to this, where reports are being there's a lot of bad blood between LSPD and BCS. And when I say I could fart and I got marshals up my ass, I'm not referencing you, but the joke is that I fought in the wrong direction and I got phone calls asking why I did something, right? And this has been going on for like 2 months. Same thing happens to Peters. Same thing happens to Daisy. I mean, Peters today was told by the undersheriff that he's subhuman, right? It's gotten to that. So,
Jesus.
So like, we go to meet with them, right? I'm playing the moderator. It is there to hear the concern. They're there to talk about their concern, and we're supposed to leave. At least that was the hope. And in order to guarantee our safety, Peters went off duty. Now, the idea behind this is pretty straightforward, is that we have been, if he was here right now, by the way, they all know that you're talking to me.
Oh yeah.
But in the same light, we didn't want some fucking bozo to come through and all of a sudden these gangbangers that are going to kill over nothing shooting us up, right? Because someone got curious, right? Because they're going to be like, who the fuck is that? Da, da, da. Well, during this conversation, I guess there was about an hour previously, it was told to everybody, do not go and antagonize these guys. We need to go find out what the fuck this is before we, like, push the envelope ourselves. But I guess some officers went down there, and one of them got wind of it. And they were called off. From my understanding, you know, I don't have radio access. I don't fucking know exactly. But it pissed one of them off, and this fucking brainlet of a fucking shithead. Guy's name is Saint. Who I know the least about because I never see this guy, and quite frankly, retroactively, I wish he never was there because I barely talk to him. These other people, these other groups, they don't want fucking they want bloodshed, right? The gangbangers, but they don't want this Hell Week shit, right?
Right.
But this fucking guy goes and shoots the one guy that genuinely does not want violence and wants to hear what the problem is. Guy just picks up the gun and fucking shoots him. And I'm over here like, no, stop. And his argument was, well, I can't trust him because this is happening right here and now. I'm like, bro, fucking 2 IQ motherfucker, all right? The guy's hearing you out now. What is he gonna fucking click his hands and tell like all 40 cops to like what? You know what I mean? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
So it doesn't think. The guy probably smokes meth. But
Yeah, they get emotional and stupid, and
yeah, he's like, well, I had to do it. I'm like, the fuck? He said this afterwards, and obviously I'm like, yeah, no, you fucking stupid, right? Like the guy, I think, for lack of a better word, because they fucking talk about this shit on Twitter. This guy's been playing a little bit like saw a fucking Valorant queue in front of him, and he's like, you know what? Let me join. You know what I mean? Like that's all I could think of at that time because it's like you're sitting here bitching and complaining on a fucking phone for 30 minutes about this is happening, this atrocity, they're baiting me, this and this, and some guys, oh, the cops never listen, and now this guy's listening, and you shoot him within 5 minutes. Fuck out of here. And the worst thing about it is like, you know, how that sort of sours things across the board, right? Because there's so many different crews of different levels of like, you know, violent levels or whatever, right? And it's like you've just fucked them over from having like an honest conversation with officers to find out where the pain points are and what's causing them to go down this way, and maybe the possibility that they tell their fucking, you know, people that are like this guy to chill the fuck out and stop shooting cops, right?
mm-hmm.
But so now it's also fucking shit because now we gotta go get this handled, right? So goes to the hospital and, you know, take him to the hospital. He gets treated, and before me and him are even able to decompress, like not decompress, but like unpack what the fuck just happened, because it was just so like
Kind of just out of the blue and very extreme.
yeah, like what? like, and like, why do we even do this if this is like the intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the point? Is he gets a phone call from Nova. And this is nothing against Nova. She's doing a job. I like her. I don't think any malice there. And then I get a phone call. 15 minutes have elapsed. And now we're like, huh? Now, the key here is he's asked about the what's going on in forum. Why are cops not going down there, et cetera, et cetera. And now I'm getting a phone call, and immediately I'm like, bro, how is this happening? I know already it's about that situation. And there's not really anything to hide, but it's more we didn't even have a chance to tell anybody. So what exactly is occurring here? Fast forward, I learned that the same Ventura guy was called by Saint, who then told Nakota, who then reported to the marshals in a span of 15 minutes. And so from the perspective of him and myself, we're like, why didn't he get a phone call about, are you okay? What is this? And who the fuck do we tell that's going to look into what happened and not have what appears to be a boner of some, like, whatever the fuck they're trying to do? So that's ultimately why we reported it to the chief, and she should have the report and all that. But it gets a little crazier is that the previous phone call that came up, like, before this meeting had taken place, that this particular officer's name had crept up. And that's understandable to a degree, right? Different crews are going to have different levels of relationships with certain officers they're going to trust a little more. That happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I don't know
how are
about
you
that.
going to call a member of the TRT we have these problems with, and the head of TRT said he never went down to Forum and that they broke off for a weapon crate? So now when you kind of start putting this all together, it starts to make you wonder, like, what exactly transpired and what was the objective? Where is the warrant for this guy, right? Where is the phone call? And this is on the helm of a police officer dying yesterday to Cornwood. Now, mind you, that was probably an accident. But before it was able to be even investigated, these guys are getting alleged by their top that you're coming after this guy instead of our sympathies and condolences for the fallen. And
BCSO is like that. They're... Go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's
I got some story about that.
Yeah, it's very. What is? Are we not? Are their job not to? I don't know. It's hard to comprehend.
To investigate, yeah.
Like, let that investigation happen. Like, no one's saying this. Anyone, no one thinks for a million years that the guy probably intended to fucking execute him, right? But why would you, like, have a problem with an investigation to begin with if you know the outcome's going to be fine? Like, you know what I mean? And
that's a normal MO with them.
Yeah. I'm sure you heard about Mr.
lie.
K getting ran over.
No, I didn't hear about that one.
I got a phone call 5 weeks ago where Ventura ran over. His name's going to come up a lot. I don't have a problem with him. His name comes up a lot to me. Well, and on Twitter. He's a senior deputy that has a direct line to Justice Angel.
No, I mean, which Ventura?
Ventura, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's popped up a couple times for me.
Driving in a vehicle, Andy and another officer in there, they intentionally run over Mr. K. Mr. K goes to the marshals. Nothing comes out of it. And now, I'm sure there's reasons, right? Your investigations are private, et cetera, but it becomes one of those things that this is a civilian. He's intentionally run over. There's admittance to these things. But then Peter gets shot and he's getting a phone call 15 minutes later. It's like, what world are we living in? Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've had my own experience with BCSO trying to interfere and bullshit about investigations on their own people.
Yeah.
Had a deputy kill somebody, a civilian, in a complete self-defense shootout. The evidence completely outlines that it was self-defense, and I proved it. I was first on scene to deal with that, and the deputy who had to unfortunately take that life, I really felt bad for him because I've been in the exact same situation he was in. He was married to somebody in a 1% motorcycle club, and I was engaged to a 1% motorcycle club member while an a Vinewood PD officer 8 years ago. And I tried to take care of the guy. I was like, look, I'm going to handle this as a third-party investigator. We're going to make sure everything's done right. I was like, wait, we need to talk so we can get some basic details out of the way. Let me see your firearm, and we can get your firearm documented so it's all evidence. I'll replace it for you. I'll pay you for a new one.
Yeah.
Let's get this all done by the book. And I was like, where do you want to talk? And he was like, let's talk at BCSO. Brought him to BCSO. Where's your most comfortable room? Where do you want to sit? And he was like, let's do it in the sheriff's office. Like, hell yeah, let's go in the sheriff's office. You pop your ass down on that couch on your own. Completely all amicable, very professional. I was welcoming to him. I was acting as kind of a friend, but also an investigator. I had a job to do. But according to BCSO, I forced him to surrender his firearm under threat of firing and locked him in an interrogation room and forced him to give a statement under duress. And that's not at all that deputy's understanding. The deputy still talks to me regularly. We check in with each other because I know what he's going through, but not according to BCSO. So I'm locked away in third shift, and it's just I don't know what it is.
You got
about that
locked
culture
away as a side effect of it?
No, I mean I always stay in third.
Gotcha.
I'm a third shift guy by nature, but I mean I've been a marshal for a little more than a month. I finally got my deputy marshal promotion last week. Thank goodness. I don't know. It just there's something off about them, and I keep looking into things. But it really doesn't surprise me that a lot of these issues seem to be stemming from budget and financial, which is kind of my strong suit. Were you around pre-collapse? I think you were. I've seen you around before.
Yeah. I used to run Los Santos Customs. Oh, pre-collapse.
Yeah. Like 8 years ago.
I ran
7, 8 years
Pegasus. Concierge.
Yeah. Do you remember? Just give me a little insight of like why I love financial crimes. And do you remember about 7, 8 years ago, you used to be able to take a loan from like Diamond Hands and fast loans and stuff like that,
or my loan company.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. Do you remember just out of the blue, the DOJ legislated out and removed it all?
I remember that because, wasn't it like Malo was like embezzling shitloads of money?
Oh, it was worse than that. I ended up I caused that over a traffic stop.
Yeah.
What started in a traffic stop over the course of the next month led to more than 250 bank subpoenas. And to the point where the Department of Justice said, Barrett, you're going to destroy the state. We're just going to legislate this out and call it quits. Because I have discovered a whole culture of fraudulent activity because that money was coming from the state. And people were going in for like the traffic stop was on a lady who moved into the state 2 weeks prior and had a $1.5 million car and no job. And nothing but robbery financials on her.
I remember that. Yeah. Holy shit.
And I looked into it, and she got a $1.6 million or a $2 million loan, which, at that time you had to have, I think it was 30% of the loan in your bank for it to get approved. And what was happening was the loan officers were transferring them the money to get the loan approved and then having them transfer it back plus a little extra on top.
He was in my detective
from
unit.
the loan and then buying them their car.
I know who it is.
And that led into a bank subpoena to prove that.
Knight would love this shit.
If there was any investigation,
he used to work for Knight,
where they actually discussed it, and then that communication led to discovery of more text where he was informing
other characters part of
Sanguine to do the same thing. And then that led to even more phone subpoenas where it showed that the other loan officers were discussing it with loan officers of other companies, where they were then discussing it with other loan officers within their companies. And phone subpoenas and bank subpoenas were rolling out nonstop. And I had to delete files out of my drive because the drive was getting full from so many documents. And then you roll into now in the state marshals. As a rookie marshal, I wasn't allowed to leave the station. I had to sit my butt in the station unless a deputy marshal came around. And at third shift, I was the only marshal, so I never got to leave the station. But just from sitting in the station, looking at reports, I was able to acquire a 65-day bank subpoena on someone and then a full raid warrant on all of their properties without once leaving the office. I love
Jesus.
paperwork. I love
Yeah.
financials. I love spreadsheets. And so this is kind of my forte, is digging into this kind of stuff.
Mm.
The only thing I really want to know is, what is the bank account number for the state account that you received those fines in, so I can start looking at things and
Absolutely.
looking this out from the foundation.
So you probably... Oh, I don't have access to the LSPD and BCSO one.
What do you mean?
So when I look at it, I only see, I think it's like, hold on. So there's
Isn't
the legislative
it counts in
authority.
legislation, isn't it?
Yes. So it looks like it's in there. Yeah, the number's in there. And hey, by the way, just FYI, I talked to the ISO compliance agency. You can't export those yet. You can only export personal accounts, but hopefully by tomorrow that's going to be resolved.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah, I just contacted ISO.
What's ISO?
Oh, it's a
There are a third shift
international.
person, so we need to.
Oh, it's International Standards Organization.
Oh, they're the ones that like define like
UTC
formatting and things.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually spoke to the Mr. Trigg, who's a member of the ISO compliance board, and there was an issue with bank accounts where they weren't ISO compliant, and so he wanted me to make sure that the state account and stuff was ISO compliant, and I just checked, and there's an error. So, yeah. So
All right.
I put a little report in, and wouldn't be surprised if it's good for tomorrow. So,
The
in case you're
superior
running
date
into
format
problems.
is year, month, day.
Year, month, day. Oh, it goes
Year,
even
month,
deeper
day,
with
hour,
ISO.
minute, second.
Yeah, it goes. Yeah, they bring that shit down. I don't know what they do. They got some crazy formatting with like Z's and pluses and shit.
Well, it has to do
but-
with Zulu and being able to adjust for time scale and stuff
Mhm.
like that. I mean, I don't. If you ever get a chance to, if you ever get to see any of my reports, I put the actual Linux timestamp on all of my
Yes,
reports.
exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. But yeah, no, this is good. This has been a very, difficult for us to navigate problem because we like to be very verbose and particular with our writing, legislatively, and this entire space is, there's no definitives, right? So,
Mhm.
and so with yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what comes out of this, and I would love if you've got time to look at our bank accounts as well. I've been trying to do as best I can labeling everything, but if you think there's a better way for us to be more transparent where our spending is, please do let me know. We barely spent any. We've been waiting for legislation to pass. I'm not gonna, if I don't write explicitly in legislation how I'm gonna spend the money, I'm not moving the money. You know what I mean? I got
fair.
fucking, like I told you, I can't move. People know that we're talking right now. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Which
100%.
doesn't scare me, but that's a lot of fucking headache to deal with when I'm just trying to do my job.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't know. I don't care that people know that I'm talking to you. I mean, I don't know if you care that people know they're talking to me, but
no,
I don't give a
perfectly
shit.
fine by me.
Like, I've had my time with the officers.
Did I fly
They've
you
shown
in?
That, did you fly me in? What?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Am I putting strings on you?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I have my own agenda, and my agenda right now is figuring out how to best resolve this stuff
Yeah.
and get things set straight. Look,
Okay.
I gave my time, and I don't want this to sound like I have a grudge or anything like that, but I've worked for the police department here, and I made a grave mistake, and I tried to own up to it, and they fucking nailed me to a cross and bludgeoned me to death over it, and betrayed my trust. And I'm here trying to help get things back sorted again.
Yeah.
And they're already proven that they just can't or won't trust me for whatever reason. And it's whatever. I'm not here to cover anyone's ass. I'm here to do my job and get things figured out.
Oh yeah. All right. Well,
I did 34 years in Bolingbrook for some things I've done already, and
oh, the
you know what?
guns.
Learned my lesson. I've got a job to do.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you need from me, Mayor? You gave me a good starting point to start deep diving into this.
Yeah, no, I feel like as somebody that I can at least, you know, if we have problems, I'd like to go to you for reports. It's like I said, there's a bit of a trust issue when it comes to we don't know if things are being handled or whether there's malicious intent behind it. It's
Well, as much as I appreciate that, don't rely on it too much. Like I said, I'm mostly a shift 3 person. I'm actually awake earlier than I normally am. I usually don't get into the office for about an hour or so. I got climbed into the office a little bit early today to look at some reports and see how bad LSPD messed up another one of my investigation.
oh, probably pretty bad.
Oh yeah, really badly. Yeah, I won't go too much into it.
Yeah.
But just complete failure in every single procedure.
I was a defense attorney before becoming mayor. How do I put this? I was I witnessed my now executive assistant have a SIM card taken from her, read through, permission asked afterwards.
Tilly,
yeah. 2 months
yeah,
it
heard
took.
about it.
2 months. It was crazy. And
Yep.
even at the end of it, you know, when hands are washed, I still look back at it and I said, for 2 months, you're telling me that nobody knew that was a thing, you know, till it came to light. Like, where accountability doesn't end with the person who made the action. Where was the corrective action? Right?
Yeah.
So,
You are 100% right on that.
yeah. So,
I'm still waiting for some of that corrective action.
Well, good luck. You might be waiting a while.
Yeah, no shit. All it took was a bullet to the head.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's a story for another time.
well,
Yeah, I bet.
Marshal, I appreciate you listening to our, having a sip of our tea.
Well, yeah, no. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I appreciate the time and the confidence to let me in on a little bit of that.
Absolutely.
Gives me a lot of good insight for work on. Y'all have a good day. Let me know if you need anything.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, Marshal. Thank you.
If you look to attack any of the, you know, the twatter shit, you know, that dereliction of duty, let me know. We've got photos and all that documented with timestamps.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll probably get some of those from you.
All right. All right.
Thank you, sir.
You take care.